front of the Chamber building, and we want to make a particularly welcome to those of you who are joining us online via Facebook, either live or later on. As I said, we are thrilled that you're here this morning. Before we get started, I do want to recognize the elected officials that are in our midst this morning. If you're an elected official, could you stand to be recognized, please? I know we've got District 1, Jill Cagle is with us this morning. And I ask the members of the board of the Winter Park Chamber of Commerce to stand to be recognized. I know we've got John Heron, Kate Cornwell from Rollins, Lauren Slyman, Michelle Strand, and Scott McCallum from Charter Spectrum. Thank you for being with us. So our mission at the Winter Park Chamber of Commerce is to convene people and ideas for the benefit of our businesses and our community. And I think this is a wonderful expression of being able to do that today. So we're just thrilled that you're here. Before we get started, I want to take a personal privilege point and thank my team who've done an incredible job putting this together, particularly our government affairs person, Dr. Loder, to my right, and Carla Beekman, Lisa Bainbridge and Carlin Beekman have been particularly valuable to me, so I want to thank them for that. So I'm thrilled that we've been able to do this with the support and partnership of Charter Communications. And at this point, I'd like to ask our board member, friend and partner, Scott McCallum, to join us up here to share a few words.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott McCallum. I'm Director of Government Affairs for Charter Communications. We are the parent company of the Spectrum branded products and services you know of. And I want to thank our candidates running for District 47 for coming this morning and giving us an opportunity to support the political process. And also thank all of you for participating in the political process. At Charter, we're doing our best to make this year the year of gig. So we've launched Spectrum Internet Gig, a broadband service offering up to 940 megs of lightning fast internet to homes and businesses. And our latest expansion of Spectrum Internet Gig includes 4 million plus homes in more than a dozen markets, including Cleveland, Erie, Pennsylvania, Toledo, Ohio, and Central Florida. Overall, Spectrum Internet Gig is now offered to more than 27 million homes. That's more than halfway to our goal of making gigabyte connections available to our entire 41-state footprint. So Spectrum Business Internet Gig also delivers the services and the bandwidth that you need here in your businesses in Winter Park. So please do visit our website or call us if you are interested in learning more about that. So now that the sponsorship stuff is done, I want to introduce one of my favorite people at Charter Communications, the face of our community from News 13. You all know her as a Central Floridian, a UCF graduate, and a mom. If you follow on social, she's quite the Renaissance woman. So we love her, and she covers news, and she's our anchor for our morning news that's live all morning long, starting at 5 a.m. So thank you for being here and moderating this. Couldn't think of a better person to do it. Thanks, Beth. Thank you.
Good morning. You can hear me? It's a small room. You can hear me, right? Oh, look at all the media back there. Hello, Channel and others. If I say it, you know, somebody at the office might not like that. We're competitors, but at the end of the day, we're all doing what we should be doing as journalists, right, and get the word out. And that's why all these folks are in the back. So I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Winter Park Chamber of Commerce. Brock for helping get everything going for today. I usually come to the farmer's market that way. So when I pulled up in my car today, I was like, wait, I'm in a vehicle. Usually I pull up to my bike. And I love Winter Park. I've lived in Orlando my whole life since 1981 from Puerto Rico. So I am glad to be sharing my passion, which is politics, okay? So we're going to do it right. We're going to get to the questions. This place is packed. The room over there right behind the door is the overflow room. And I loved when I came in and was told that this place was going to be hopping today because it shows people are interested, and they should be. Now I'll stick to the script. Welcome to the, I know my producer's back at the station like, stick to the script. Welcome to the Winter Park Chamber of Commerce, House District 47 debate. As Scott stated, Scott McCallum, My name is Yvette Boussoit from Charter Communications. So before we invite the candidates on stage, I would like to go ahead and explain the format, okay? This morning's debate, so you'll know exactly what to expect. There'll be a coin flip, here's my coin, right here, to determine by myself what's going to happen as how we get going, okay? So candidate A wins the toss. They choose to open or choose to be the last to deliver the closing remarks. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds. Let me say that again. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds to respond to a question, alternating in order. If desired, the first candidate to respond to a question will be allotted 30 seconds for a rebuttal. At the end of the program, that mic is really hot. Each candidate will be given 60 seconds for their final remarks. The audience is asked, dear audience, we love you. But remember this, you're asked to refrain from applauding, booing, or other interruptions so that we can focus, laser focus, on what the candidates have to say. I'm a mom, so trust me, I've got a voice that projects, and you know, I'm always yelling at my 10-year-old, so no noise, except for now, as we welcome the Democratic candidate, Anna Eskamani, and the Republican candidate, Dr. Reeves, onto the stage. Okay, so I will flip a coin, which is right here. Heads is Anna Eskamani, tails is Stockton Reeves. The winner will decide if they would like to open or close. Here we go. We're going to do this in dramatic fashion right in the middle. So the cameras can get it. Channel 2 probably wore me out, that's all right. Okay, so here we go. I could have done this here, but whatever, bless you. I want to make sure that. Okay, can you read this? I want a second opinion. It is what? Heads. Heads. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Heads. Okay, so that means if it's heads, it's Anna Eskamani. So heads. Anna, do you want to open or close?
Thank you, Yvette. I will be closing.
You will be closing. Okay, let me put this down here because you know I will forget. Okay, right on cue, the chain. Okay, so let's go ahead and get right to it if we don't get drowned out. That's pretty good. We're fine. The first question this morning is, how does, and of course the question is for you, Mr. Stockton Reeves. And by the way, before we get started, shocking, you guys have more in common than people think. Oh, gasp. Both of you are product of the public school system in this area. So applaud for that, okay? We have stuff in common, y'all. You heard it here first. Okay, so the first question to Mr. Reeves. How does your background and experience uniquely qualify you to become our next House District 47 representative?
Very good question, and I would say that I don't have a traditional background as a candidate. There's a lot of things in my background that are a little bit different. I grew up here, do work in architecture, but the background things I would tell you about are things that I've worked on over the years, such as serving 6 years on the Winter Park Housing Authority, 6 years on the state of Florida's Firefighters Pension Health Safety Board, almost 20 years on the Board of Trustees at the Macon Arts Center, and I would say that 30-some years ago, if you know Dr. Peter Pritchard, who's recognized as one of the world's foremost turtle experts, he undertook 2 expeditions to the jungles of Guyana, where 4 different species of ocean-going turtles come ashore to lay eggs. And the first 2 expeditions that he led to Guyana to try to help save those turtles, I was on both of those expeditions. So I really have a different kind of background to come at this, but I think it gives me a worldview, and I've had to work with a diverse group of people across whole different sectors in this community. So I think that's really given me an underlying foundation to be able to go out there and hopefully serve all of the residents of District 47 and do so equally.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And same question to you.
Thank you so much, Yvette. It's fantastic to be here. Good morning, Winter Park Chamber. So, I'm a working class daughter of immigrants. My lived experiences help guide me in being an empathetic leader, one that's authentic and unapologetic when it comes to fighting for the needs of everyday Floridians. My professional background is also grounded in a strong academic background. So I did grow up in this sweet town, went to Orange County Public Schools, K through 12,
I went to the University of Central Florida, where I hold 2 BAs, 2 masters, including 1 in public administration, and I'm now pursuing my doctorate in public affairs. From a professional lens, I've worked in the nonprofit sector for 6 years. I served as Senior Director of Public Affairs and Communications for Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida, where I manage a team of 6 across 22 counties and 11 health centers, fighting every day to ensure that Florida's women can access health care. That experience as a manager is critical to being a legislator. I've had to hire people, fire people, and lay off people working on a nonprofit with tight budgets. So I'm very careful when it comes to money. I'm very ethical in every approach and decision that I make, and we run a really positive campaign. You can trust me to be a legislator that's proactive in solving problems, not creating more problems.
All right, thank you very much. So let's go ahead and move on to question number 2. Please give us, and we'll start with Anna Eskamani, please give us your vision of how to enhance the local economy and the role the legislature should play in that.
I love that question, and Senator was on cue. So we actually firmly love and believe in the power of small business in our campaign. And one of the first things we did on our campaign was launch our 47 Meets Business platform. And this is a space where we talk about a world where business owners, managers, entrepreneurs, and workers can coexist and live together. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game anymore. We can actually all reach the American dream and succeed in our aspirations. So if you look at that platform, we paint the picture of cutting red tape for the small business owner. We talk about sustainability and trying to incentivize more green, not just green jobs, but green buildings for the next business owners. We also touch on issues around sexual assault and harassment. That's also critical to having a robust and safe work environment for all. At the end of the day, the main goal of the legislature is to pass a balanced budget, and we prioritize infrastructure. Public transit is one of them. Public transit can help ensure we attract not just good paying jobs, but also the talent. Because reality is in District 47, the new currency is people. It's having the workforce actually hire folks into these jobs. And we want a diverse workforce of individuals, whether they're homegrown or come to call Central Florida home, who realize that this is a community that embraces diversity and is ready to take us to the next level of any sector.
Okay, Mr. Reeves.
Well, I would say as a small business owner with 2 businesses, we have to deal with these decisions each and every day. I personally think that, Anna's right, that the first constitutional mandated role of the government, the state and legislature, is to pass a balanced budget. I do believe that we need to create the economic environment where we can continue job growth and keep the economy strong. I do think we need to mandate that certain government interventions don't press down and make us have problems in government, running government, and doing our businesses. I do think, however, having served on the Housing Authority, one of the issues that hasn't been touched on is the affordable housing and making sure that people who want to come to Florida, who graduate from UCF, who want to stay in the area, stay working here, have an opportunity to live in and around where they're going to work. So one of the things I've talked to a lot of people about is affordable housing. That's one of the issues. And I'm trying to remember, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to remember, Joey, less is more, right?
Okay, let's continue now with question number 3. And as I present this question to the 2 of you, make sure I have my notes here down. Let's look at the landscape of this district. We're talking about downtown Orlando, east of I-4, parts of Winter Park, Edgewood, Conway. I was looking at the district last night and this morning as I was getting ready. Holden Heights and Conway, it is a mixed bag.
It sure is.
So the 2 of you have to deal with different socioeconomic scenarios and life situations and school settings and family units. So just keep that in mind as we continue with the questions this morning. So we'll present this to Mr. Reeves, the next question, and then we'll follow with Anna. What impediments do you see to attracting high-paying, high-tech jobs to the region, and what impediments do you see that the state legislature could address? Mr. Reeves, you can go first.
I think the legislature's goal is really simple in policy. I think it's up to us to try to put things out there and encourage people to either move businesses here or create businesses. One of the things I've talked about over the past year is that years ago our firm was the architect of record for a building I wish more Floridians knew about, which is the Florida Solar Energy Center. My father was the architect of record. Talking about economic jobs and manufacturing, Florida's never been a manufacturing company, but we do have 4 players in Central Florida that I would love to get in the same room. One One is the Space Center and Space Launch Command. One is the Florida Solar Energy Center, the modeling and simulation area out by UCF, and UCF, which is our second largest university. Nobody's ever got those four people in the same room with the understanding that the back of our license tag is a simple thing that says the Sunshine State. And we've been designing buildings to meet LEED certification long before the U.S. Green Building Council ever conceived the concept of LEED. I think we have an opportunity in the years ahead to create a Silicon Valley, if you will, for photovoltaic and alternative energy. And I'm not talking about just the R&D people making the big dollars at the top, but I'm talking about vocational training to help people who want to go into these trades work almost at a vertically integrated from the manufacturing to the operations, the maintenance, the operation. That's one area I think we could do a lot of work in, and that's not necessarily involves the legislature, but it involves work, energy, and effort on our part.
Okay, Anna?
Thank you so much. So I do think that there's intentional steps can be taken to push the legislature into the 21st century. The reality is that the Florida House and Senate, and now the governor's seat, has been under one-party control for 2 decades. And they have built an economy around keeping Floridians poor. We know that in our community, where the 32% of Orlandonians can't even afford rent. We know that we have families living paycheck to paycheck, like my family did when I grew up in this town. And so the reality is that we can't keep cutting tax cuts to the most wealthiest corporations in our state. We have to locally invest. And that means supporting our up-and-coming startup community and building infrastructure through whether it's fiber optics or other technological needs, so that startup, that small business can actually look at Orlando as a place of home. We often market Central Florida as being for your business because of cheap labor. That's not an economic plan. We need to offer something more to businesses to bring them here. And we have incredible universities that are creating this talent, but that's it. And I also just want to point out the irony of my opponent talking about solar energy, where he's accepted a donation from gasoline companies and industries that service the fossil fuel world. And so I'll tell you that in our campaign, we take $0 from fossil fuel companies and $0 from U.S. sugar. And really intentional about that, because these are industries that we must work with. And I'm honored to have conversations with these industries, to sit in rooms with them. But at the end of the day, I have to be free of that influence.
Mr. Reeves, you can get a rebuttal in if you'd like, 30 seconds.
Look, I'm 53 years old, going on 54. I know who I am and what I'm about. And I'm going to tell you right now, if anybody thinks they can buy me off with a check, they're sadly mistaken.
Ms. Eskamani, 30 seconds to go back and forth. You can have a discussion about this.
I think it's incredibly important that as legislators, we remain free of any influence. And we know that these are industries that have bought and owned the state of Florida. And it's so critical that we are in a place to challenge them. And I'll tell you that my 10 years of advocacy, I've always challenged the status quo. Special interests have owned this state for far too long, y'all. It's about time we elect someone who understands what struggle is and is tough because of it, and can stand toe-to-toe with these folks, not just on issues on environmental protection, but also issues around healthcare access, around gun violence, and protecting public education.
Okay, moving on to question number 4. Winter Park, of course, known as a city of arts and culture. Cultural tourism is such an important economic engine for the city of Winter Park and other cities around the state, of course. What would you do to increase arts and culture funding? Anna Eskamani, we'll start with you on this question.
So the arts are a big part of my life. When I was 13 years old, I lost my mom to cancer. And my passion is driven by that loss, because I made a commitment to honor my mom's life, the act of empowering others. I was 13 going into high school, not knowing what I would do to live life without my mom, and I found high school theater. So, I'm a proud high school thespian, though I'm now 28, it's kind of ridiculous to call myself a thespian still, but I did technical theater for 3 years, and that was my safe place. That kept me out of harm's way. I want to make sure that the arts are here for every kid like me, and every adult, every veteran, every person who's experiencing trauma in their life, to have an outlet in the arts. And this legislature, year after year, and again, it's a Republican-controlled legislature, has slashed the dedicated arts funding by 90% in the last 5 years. That is not okay. District 47 is home to Lock Haven Park. It is home to some of the most incredible nonprofits that do so much with so little. And yet we have slashed their budgets completely, forcing them to turn to who are very generous philanthropists in our community. But at the end of the day, there's not enough. We need a dedicated source of arts funding. And we wrote on our website, on our blog, we're going to fight to restore the dedicated funding back to pre-recession numbers. and you have my commitment to always fight for the arts and to be a strong voice for arts and culture in the Florida House.
Okay, Mr. Reeves?
Well, I've been talking for the last year over the course of the campaign trail, and I've talked a lot about the arts involvement that my family's had and I've had. And I go back to the fact that I did serve almost 20 years on the board of the Maitland Arts Center, including 3 terms as its chairman. And I worked with United Arts and their advocacy group, where we did fight for more funding for artists and art cultural projects. I will tell you this, I may be Republican, but art and humanities are 2 sides of the other coin, which a lot of Republicans talk about in terms of science and engineering and math. I think you have to have both sides of the same coin. My son's in theater tech at Winter Park High School. My daughter plays the violin. And I'm a strong believer in the arts, always have been. And I have been very vocal that I will fight for art funding. And we have worked with Division of State Department of Cultural Affairs, including an exhibit that our family had at the Orlando Museum of Art earlier this year. So I think I have a background in history that proves I am an art supporter. And we'll fight for that funding.
Can I respond?
Yes, you may have 30 seconds.
Thanks to do that. So I appreciate your leadership in the arts. That's fantastic. Unfortunately, leadership did nothing to protect arts funding, because you said you've been in that role for 20 years, and 20 years of one-party control has led to the arts being defunded time and time again. And so my other point is that at the end of the day, when it comes to Republican members of Florida House, they respond to their leader, and the Speaker of the House has made it very clear that he does not support, not even tax dollars going towards these type of programs, but also film incentives, which is another area of great importance to our district. We've lost so many film jobs, and that's another area of focus for us.
Okay, did you want to have a 30-second rebuttal?
I do. I think it's important to get the facts straight. First of all, I served 20 years on the board of the Maitland Arts Center. I was not in the legislature. I was not a lobbyist in the legislature. My goal was to stand up for them and to work with them within the arts environment, which I think we did very well at. So let's get it straight.
Thanks for that.
Okay, let's continue now with the next question. Mr. Stockton Reeves, you will answer this question first. Do you support continued funding for Visit Florida?
I do.
Why?
I was trying to be succinct, but I would tell you that
You got 90 seconds, so I'd say you have, like, I don't know, 88 more to go.
part of the role that I have with the business that we have is in marketing. And I know that marketing changes over time. And I can tell you that working with Visit Florida and other places that work to promote Central Florida and bring people here, a marketing campaign that goes into effect today is not going to work 5 years from now. You know, if you're Disney or SeaWorld and you're trying to get me and my family to come here because my daughter's 5 years old and she wants to see certain aspects of, you know, tourism, that campaign's not going to work on our family to bring us back in 5 or 7 years. So in order to compete with the other areas around this country that are vying for the tourist dollars, we have to continually reinvent ourselves and find ways to bring people here from other parts of the country and other countries. So if you don't reinvent yourself and you don't put the dollars into marketing us, people won't come.
Okay, on Eskamani, same question to you.
Thank you, Giba. So we know tourism is a major industry in our state. 23% of Florida's sales tax comes from tourism. So it's critically important that we support the efforts that ensure the growth of tourism. And Florida has been really unique in the fact that despite we've experienced natural disasters and even major incidents of gun violence, the tourism continues. And that's important for us. And so I do support ensuring that organizations like Visit Florida, Visit Orlando have those resources. However, I will stress the importance of transparency in this process. We know that this past 2-3 sessions, there's been some really just poor use of public dollars on marketing campaigns. And I think it's critically important that there's a balance between what is shared, because there's obviously propriety concerns for someone who's exploring a new marketing campaign, but to be sensitive to that you're spending public dollars and it must be used wisely.
Okay. Do you guys think it needs more oversight? Let me ask Mr. Reeves that question first, then Anna, you can follow up.
I think any time that you have public dollars in use, there has to be transparency. I understand that the issue, as Anna alluded to, was maybe some proprietary information in the contracts that they signed, but anytime you are at public dollars in place, that needs to be open and accessible. Once you've cut the contract and the contract is done, then those contracts can be made public. And again, it just goes back to transparency, which we've been talking about for over a year, transparency and equity.
Anna, agree or disagree with that?
And I think that transparency is hopefully a bipartisan issue that we do our part to make sure that your tax dollars being used wisely, and actually, legislation that I would like to sponsor is transparency along our CRAs, which play such a critically important role in our community. We want to make sure that, for those who don't know, that's community redevelopment agencies, that they do an incredible job in trying to retain local tax dollars to work in communities of light. But there is no statewide database for CRAs, and I know for entrepreneurs who are looking to pitch their applications or pitch their programs, it'd be good to have that type of transparency and access to those agencies.
Well, sorry, with all due respect, we're just, once I see that red card, we gotta go to the next one. Okay, so this next question, question 6, on Eskamani will start, and then Mr. Reeves can follow that. So the question is, would you support the available uses of the tourist development tax to include infrastructure funding?
I love this question. Absolutely, I would. And I know that's actually an unpopular response to the tourism industry in our community. But the reality is that tourism is a huge burden on safety, on law enforcement, on our firefighters, on the environment. We're seeing struggles over in Brevard County with the Indian River Lagoon, and tourism dollars not being allocated to solve that crisis. And it's actually Republican leaders in these spaces that are pushing for that. And so Representative Randy Fine, who's out of Brevard County, he did sponsor legislation last session to help unblock the TDD taxes to go towards infrastructure. And I think that is so important, not only for the reasons I already explained, but also to the fact that the legislature has made it a pastime to demonize cities and counties, and not even through an optics lens, but also cutting off their funding. And so when it comes to our county and city governments, they need home rule, but they also need to be able to access dollars that have typically been restricted to them through preemption via the Florida legislature.
Okay, Mr. Reeves, the same question for you. Would you support the available uses of the tourist development tax to include infrastructure funding?
Well, I certainly think it needs to be looked at. However, I will say that in some respects, when you do have funding that's allocated to a specific goal, you need to keep it to that goal. But in the future, as we move forward, I don't think that anybody has an understanding of what police chiefs and fire chiefs and firefighters and police officers go through every day, because these are the people who are our client base. And I will tell you that I have talked to people in Tallahassee and told them that our client base is local government, cities and counties across this nation, throughout Florida. And I'm very, very firm on believing that you cannot strip things away from local municipalities and aggregate the power in Tallahassee and force unfunded state mandates. So I've been very firm on that, and I've told people that that's what I believe and that's how I'm going to state. But we do have needs. We do have needs in public safety, local law enforcement, county law enforcement, fire training, and I do want to see those needs met. And if there has to be a way to find the funding for it, that's an option.
May I respond?
Yes, you may have 30 seconds.
Thanks, Yvette. So I do want to note that Visit Florida received $67 million last session, which again is a deep disgrace compared to the $2.6 million our arts community reached. And my alternative point too is to the point of public safety. I just want to mention that we're honored to have the endorsement of the Orlando Firefighter Union, the State Firefighter Union, and our Orange County Firefighter Unions. And I know for these folks that are responding to crisis, oftentimes in the situation of tourism, having flexibility for this money to go towards the infrastructure support them is very important.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reeves, any final comments on that?
She's got fire, I've got police. I've got the fraternal order of police and the PBA, but I will tell you this. I don't want to make it a police-fire thing because I love everybody in public safety, but a lot of these things, the one thing that's not dealt with in public safety is training. Training goes a long way to preventing a lot of shootings, a lot of deaths, particularly on the civilian side. We were the ones that designed the 55-lane fire range for the city of Orlando. There needs to be other training facilities. And I've talked to Steve Casey, Florida Sheriff's Association, Amy Mercer, Florida Police Chiefs, about the creation under the auspices of Florida Department of Law Enforcement for what I would call super regional training facilities that would benefit all of our police and fire and first responders.
Okay. Any rebuttal on that?
I think I'm solid. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Question 7. So this is a really fascinating question for so many levels, because even though folks may say, trimming a tree, like, what's the big deal? If I rent the little guest house in the back, what's the big deal? So home rule is a core issue for local government and for the quality of life. I would say many parts of Central Florida, but we're focusing on Winter Park right now. So bills regarding short-term rentals, tree trimming, local election dates and community redevelopment agency regulations were brought forward last session. So, Mr. Stockton Reeves, we'll start with your answer here. Are there any areas where you believe the legislature should overrule home rule, and why?
Well, I firmly believe that Winter Park, Maitland, any Belle Isle, everything. If you have a way that fits within your comp plan, the way that you want design standards or anything else, then you should be able to do that without interference from Tallahassee. The only reason why I think that you need an overriding law is when you deal with things like alcohol or tobacco, where you can't have one set of rules in the city and you go outside the county and they're selling different things at different places at different times. But I do believe very strongly in letting local decision makers make decisions that affect their community at the local level. And that's tree trimming, it's design standards, it's comp plans, and the like.
Okay, Anna Eskamani.
Thanks so much. It's really ironic because, again, the Republican Party has been in control of the legislature for 20 years, and though they preach a philosophy of small government, they practice time and time again big government policies on preemption, taking away the rights of our cities and of our counties, all the way to the point of trees, issues around trees. And so it's incredibly offensive, just the hypocrisy of it all. My MO is always going to be place-based policy. Local policy is best. So I lean on my cities and my counties to tell me what's up, what are their needs, and to communicate through partnership on that level. The only case that I've heard meaningful dialogue around preemption could be in the realm of utilities for high-tech companies, because sometimes a smaller city might not be able to support the fiber optics, the wiring for some companies that can, so there needs to be a dialogue around those type of issues so that we're all, we want to have Wi-Fi across the state and might require some sort of policy in that level. But at the end of the day, my leaning is always going to be on home rule and protecting local government. And again, it's not just the Republican Party that has had this policy. It's fueled by special interests and lobbyists, including organizations like Associate Industries of Florida, who represent some of the biggest companies in this state, who make money off preemption by keeping things standard for them, so they don't have to go county, city by city and lobby on their interests. And again, I want to stress that AIF gave Stockton $500.
I'm sorry, we have to stop it right there. How are we doing on time? We're doing thumbs up. Rebuttal from you, Mr. Reeves?
Yes, I just want to point out that this is not about state parties, this is not about other people, this is about House 47 in our community, and that's where I'm keeping the focus.
Ms. Eskamani?
I would love to rebuttal. I think that's not true. I think that you're absolutely funded by the Republican Party of Florida. That's what the mailer said this past week. And so I think it's quite clear that at the end of the day, you are partisan. You've run for office more than 3 times under a party hat. And in me, as a progressive Democrat, my approach is always to be inclusive and to invite all people to the table. And we are honored to have Republican supporters, some even in this room today.
Thank you both for your very candid answers to that question. Let's go ahead and get to question number 8. And Ms. Anna Eskamani, we'll start with you. Do you believe our higher education is adequately funded? 90 seconds. I know we could go for like 2 hours on that topic alone, but
yes,
90 seconds.
No, it is not. Higher education gets broken down typically into 2 realms. That's university systems and the state college system. Our university systems tend to get some more attention compared to state college. The reality is that it's UF and FSU that tend to get the most attention. And it's likely because the majority of their grads are in the legislature and they're closer to Tallahassee in proximity, they have greater influence. I know for my Friday nights, I want to make sure that we bring money back to the district for UCF. We also ensure there's transparency in how that money is spent. I was disappointed recently with UCF not using funds appropriately. So always with oversight. We definitely need to ensure that higher ed is accessible to our young people. And we also pay our faculty better too, and try to find a way to do that. Right now, our adjuncts are having poverty wages, and there is an effort for adjuncts to work with their board of trustees to earn more money to pay their worth. And so that's an ongoing conversation. So for me, it's both sides. It's the student experience, but also the faculty and professor experience, so that they're actually being paid what they're worth, so they can deliver that high-quality experience that's led to so many incredible UCF grads and Rollins grads and Valencia grads doing amazing work in this community and across the world.
Okay, Mr. Stockton Reeves, the same question for you, sir. Do you believe our higher education is adequately funded?
No, I really don't, but I think my focus would really not be more towards the higher education, but my focus would be more on K towards 12. I really believe that the investment that we make in our children will pay off higher dividends along down the road. And I think that I'd like to see Florida increase teacher salaries. I'd like to see us bring back some more vocational education and some opportunities, because not every child is going to want to go to college. Not every child will want to go to college. Be in college. So I think Florida needs to make sure that the avenues for kids to go and achieve their dreams, whether it's vocational or what have you, that we make put ourselves in a position that they can afford themselves to reach their goals by doing that. So my focus is not so much on higher education, but more K through 12.
Okay, Ms. Eskamani, did you want to rebuttal on that?
I'd love to respond. As a proud graduate of Orange County Schools, along with Stockton, for myself, K through 12, I believe firmly in the importance of funding public education and fighting back against for-profit charter schools that are hurting our public school system, something that Stockton has actively supported in his primary. And so it's not just about funding our teachers better, but it's also ensuring that we do our part to make sure that we protect public schools, that they have adequate capital outlay funds so they can improve their infrastructure, and that we ensure that we do not arm our teachers in that environment as well, and make sure that we stop on time.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to try to be as quickly as I can on this next rebuttal question, very quick for the two of you. You were talking about, Ms. Eskamani, the charter school situation. I want just a simple yes or no. Do you think there needs to be more oversight? This question is for the both of you. It's not on my card here, but it's just coming off. Just think about this conversation. Yes or no that charter schools need more oversight?
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay. What do you say to a family that has a special needs child that says, you know what, charter is the way to go because my child has autism or some other special abilities that some advocates would say, and that is their only option? And so at that point, do you say yes to charter in some respects?
Absolutely. I mean, if you know what I say, for-profit charter schools, because we have incredible charter schools in the district that I've had the honor to visit. And we also have Quest Inc., that is a nonprofit that serves our students who are on the spectrum, and they do receive the McKay Scholarship. We also have SECO that works with our children with motor disabilities, and this is a one-to-one experience, and they're also funded the McKay Scholarship. I want to stress the McKay Scholarship stops when you are 22 years old, so we need to have an approach beyond the voucher system to support these kids as they turn to adults, so they're not going to be living in a nursing home situation when they should be adults that are able-bodied and able to contribute in the way they wish to. So it's a larger conversation to have, but that is one role that charter schools are very strong in, but that tends to be your local mom and pop nonprofit charter schools, not the for-profit ones that continue to abuse the system.
Okay, Mr. Reeves, your thoughts on charter schools filling the void for those families who have children with special needs?
I'm going to shock everybody with what I'm about to say, and I agree with Hannah, because I've also toured SECO over on off of 436 and seen the work they've done with kids with cerebral palsy. And relative to Quest, it's run by a good friend of mine, John Gill, who I've known since we were at Glenridge Junior High, and I think they do a fantastic amount of work with good people, and I want to see those opportunities continue. So I agree with you.
Excellent. Common ground.
Common ground, and this is a very serious situation. You look at people who are marginalized because they're different in some way, and the two of you, it's very refreshing. You've got a Democrat sitting next to a Republican, looking at each other in the eye, nodding yes. That is something to walk away with today. If you walk away with anything, I think that's just fantastic for the two of you. Okay, here we go. Question number 9. So we will start with Mr. Stockton Reeves, and then followed by Anna Eskamani. Florida is proud of its beautiful natural environment, which also helps, of course, draw millions of tourists to the state. We have seen destruction of sea life killed by red tide, as well as polluted waterways. What do you believe the state legislature should do to preserve our natural environment? Mr. Stockton Reeves, we'll start with you.
Well, I will tell you, from the time I was 8 till the time I graduated from high school, a lot of my weekends were spent with my father and my brother doing excavations on Temecula and habitation mounds where Points and Video are now. Sometimes literally weeks before the bulldozers came in to scrape them, which is a terrible tragedy. But I will tell you that I've grown up canoeing on Econoline and places. And I really firmly believe, as a Republican, I'm going to hit on this, but as a Republican, I'm a firm believer in protecting and preserving our lakes, our waterways, our natural environment. I want to see the Florida Trail, which a lot of people don't know exists. Everybody's heard of the Appalachian Trail. I'd like to see the Florida Trail connected, finished, marketed, and available for everybody to go and enjoy year-round. I do believe that the Florida legislature has a role to look into, in terms of water quality, the amount of phosphates and fertilizers that we up here in the Orlando area put into waterways that find its way south to Lake Okeechobee to create this problem that we're enduring. And the other thing I'll tell you is one of the things that I felt strong about over the years, as my parents will allude to, is water. Clean, safe, potable water. The Florida aquifer, which serves us as our drinking water and other surface water, I believe is a shared natural resource. It should be enjoyed by all Floridians, and it should not be taken advantage of by companies that want to pump it out and then charge us back for the right to use it.
On Eskamani?
So many thoughts. So I absolutely echo the sentiments about the importance of our environment, not only for the sake of our values, but for our economy, as many people come to Florida because of our natural resources. I want to stress that the legislature has ignored the will of the Florida voter with Amendment 1 funds, which was the 2014 amendment we voted on to create a new source of revenue for conservation efforts. This money was spent instead on overhead costs for our state parks versus actually expanding and enhancing our protection for the environment. Under the administration of Governor Rick Scott, we have taken the P out of FDEP, that is your Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Under his administration, we've also removed the word climate change from lexicon. I will tell you that this is a candidate who believes in science. I believe in climate change. Sea levels are rising. We must take action now, meaningful action, both in hard ways and soft ways to combat what is not just a natural disaster for us, but it also is a deep injustice to many marginalized communities who are directly impacted by climate change more than others. And so to that point, there's so many efforts the legislature can do on reducing our consumption, on pushing for more sustainable energy resources. And again, we have to ensure that our state agencies are protecting the environment, not serving as a rubber stamp for developers.
How are we doing on time? We're doing great. I think this question deserves a little bit more. Yes, and that's what I'm trying to get at. We've got more time to get into the subject. Yes, sir. 30 seconds.
Well, several weeks ago, at Rollins College, there was a symposium, and it was exactly on ecology, climate change, and sea level rise. And I believe between the two of us, I was the only one at that forum addressing this issue and talking about sea level change and rise and how we can combat it and what we can do in the future. And I will tell you, one of the things that I firmly believe in is that we need to plan now for the future, because we have communities in South Florida that are going to be affected by sea level rise, and they are now. We have saltwater intrusion in the wells in eastern Orange County. We need to worry about things like that and how we deal with potable water.
30 seconds, Ms. Eskamani.
So that forum was for primary opponents, and so there was no reason for us to be present. And I think that our record speaks for itself on believing in climate change and not just believing in it, but actually taking an intentional stance against the special interests who are destroying the state alongside holding politicians accountable on that front. I've already listed some examples of special interests influencing through finances Stockton's campaign. And for us, when I say we run a clean campaign, that also means that we are clean in where our money comes from. That's the grassroots and not corporations that are making the majority of the ROI off fossil fuels.
All right. Let's boogie on over to the next question. And Ms. Eskamani, you will answer first, followed by Mr. Reeves. So Orange County, I think a lot of you will be able to relate to this because my phone lately is just blowing up. Orange County has some of the highest rates of telemarket fraud and phishing in the country. In this vicinity, there's a large concentration of senior citizens. Does that become a senior citizen? I did turn 47 last month. That's when my phone calls started coming. In this vicinity, there's a large concentration of senior citizens who are especially vulnerable. What steps should be taken to crack down on this fraud? Ms. Eskamani, you can go first.
Oh my God, what a question of deep value. And we each experience that. My phone is always ringing with these calls. So our seniors are a vulnerable population alongside our low-income communities or non-English-speaking communities. So we need to ensure that whatever approach we take to prevent fraud is wide-ranging. This is an issue that our consumer protection division should be working on too in the state, in the executive branch. And so, it's so tough to offer one solution, so I'll have to offer a few. But I think there can be efforts to penalize these type of fraud calls and do our best to trace where they're coming from. But I think at the end of the day, we have to look at education campaigns, whatever platform is best for that community, and bringing together stakeholders who are in those communities to help us is going to be critical. Because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that our seniors know, that our non-English-speaking members know that when they receive these type of calls, they are fraudulent and not engaged. And that also reflects into email fraud as well, which is another trend that people need to be aware of. So I would advocate for education campaigns, working with local governments to make that happen, but whatever we can do to hold those fraudsters accountable, especially if they commit the fraud. How does that person seek justice? And ensuring that they have access to legal support pro bono to make that a reality.
Mr. Reeves?
I think it goes, well, I've never given any money to a Nigerian prince, so I've never fallen for that. But I will tell you, it's not just phone calls, it's not just emails, it's also people, when they talk about preying on the elderly, people showing up on their doorstep and offering to paint the house or redo the driveway or do some roof work, and people get money and run off. I think statutorily we need to work with the law enforcement, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, local sheriffs, local state attorneys, to increase penalties for people that engage in this activity and increase the time that they would serve if convicted. It's something that really tears your heart when you find somebody like my little old neighbor who's 94 years old, if they get suckered out of paying $3,500 to redo the driveway, and these people take the upfront money and walk off. I think it's something out there that a lot of people don't hear about because not everybody wants to admit that they were a victim of crime. But I think it happens a lot more than we know.
And these calls can be so harassing. I had a coworker, colleague, journalist over in the Tampa Bay area, and he recorded his conversation as he's on the phone with this guy who was brutal to a colleague of mine. You know, journalists, we think like they can handle any question, whatever. He was going at him toe to toe, and the guy, it was bad. It was really bad. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. This one, we at Spectrum News did an entire hour live town hall debate on, or part of that town hall was about this very topic just a few months ago, in which I had the honor to moderate, and I got to speak with people who had served time. And so this is the question for the two of you, and we started last time, we ended with Mr. Stockton Reeves, so we'll start this one with Mr. Reeves as well. Should felons be granted voting rights?
Personally, I think we put a lot of people in jail that don't need to be in jail for lower crimes that are not crimes against persons. And working with Florida sheriffs and Florida police chiefs, I feel like, if you have gone to prison, if you've paid your debt, we need to find a way to integrate those people back into the community so that they don't have high rates of recidivism. But I also think that when we get people incarcerated in the state of Florida, we need to work with them to help them get educational opportunities, get their GED, get some counseling, figure out why they're there, and how we can help get them away from that when they get out of prison. So to me, it's a more holistic look on that, the individual. And I do think we incarcerate too many people. I do think we need prison reform. We need prison justice reform. But I think we need to figure out how to get these people through the system and into areas where they cannot recommit crimes and come back in. And that may be Job Corps training, that could be educational training, that could be a lot of counseling and the like. That's my belief.
Okay, Eskamani, your answer for should felons be granted voting rights?
Absolutely. We have on our ballot Amendment 4 to make that a reality. So I encourage everyone to vote for Amendment 4 this year to restore the rights of nonviolent felons. To that point, we know that the legislature has slashed funding for traditional programs for those who have served their time and are trying to regain their full citizenship. This type of process of restoring your rights that was put into place by Governor Rick Scott is very much the new Jim Crow. And if you've ever seen a clemency board hearing, you'll be so frustrated by the experience because there is no standard. It's literally an individual who has served their time explaining to our state officials why the rights should be restored with no type of standard, and really offensive questions in the process too. And that needs to be removed completely. There needs to be a process for automatic rights restoration, which Amendment 4 will grant. And so one final thought in closing is that I do think it's necessary that we change the conversation from criminal justice to public safety. It's not about how many people we can arrest, it's about keeping everyone safe. And to that point, instead of arresting someone for a small crime, civil citations are an option to remove people from the mass incarceration system. This also ties into something called the school to prison pipeline, which tends to happen in low-income communities and communities of color, with LGBTQ youth, with youth who are autistic, where they are treated as young criminals versus young people who need restorative justice.
Okay, thank you both for the answer on that. Do you guys remember Orange County Commissioner Mildred Fernandez a while back? You know, she was she was a member of the audience of that town hall. One of the things that she was so upset about, and we met with other convicted felons who had served their time, she says she can't even vote at her HOA. So this, like, we go, well, if you can't vote, I mean, at that level, she's like, I've served my time, what's the deal? So she and other advocates were in the audience that night, and it had a lot of people thinking, you know what I mean? Okay, and now it's time for our, this is our viewer. Hey, how's the overflow room? Give me a woohoo on the other side. Overflow room, can you hear me? Give me a woohoo. They're down the hall. It's live on Facebook. Thank God it's not live on TV. It's like, oh. Okay, so here we go. The subject, transportation, audience member question. Do you believe, and I'm going to read it verbatim, do you believe, it's a delay! I knew they wouldn't let me down. Love me, the overflow audience. Okay, that's awesome. Do you believe the Sunrail should be funded? Let me go ahead and look at my card here. Okay, Eskamani, you get to go first to answer that question.
Just generically, should Sunrail be funded?
Yeah, I'm literally reading. Yeah, I don't want to read into it.
So we already paid for Sunrail. We have to pay for it, right? Especially in Winter Park, the city has committed funds to it. We need Sunrail to work. My preference when Sunrail was first being presented, it's been a decades-long process to get to where it is today, was that it followed I-4. And I think if Sunrail followed I-4, it would have 5 times the capacity that it has now. Part of our campaign, we actually did a public transit adventure where we traveled from Orlando to Winter Park just using public transit, and it was wild. And I'm an able-bodied person. You know, I can walk, I can handle the heat. But if you are a senior, if you're a mom, a working mom at that, being able to get from point A to point B is nearly impossible in this state and even in our district through public transit. So I see Sunrail as a key component to this, but we need later hours, we need to open on the weekends, we need to look at student discount rates with your student ID on links. You can ride for free, but trying to take links from downtown Orlando, from Central Link Station to UCF takes over 2 hours. You could ride your bike a lot faster, and I know that because someone did it and told me. And so we have a lot of work to do to make public transit work. A huge area that is lacking is dedicated funding towards transit, and that needs to happen on multiple levels of government, city, county, state, and federal for transportation dollars to figure out how we make this system work. And so I do think it should be funded, but we have to make it robust.
Okay, Mr. Reeves, your answer to, do you believe the Sunrail should be funded?
I'm going to date myself by telling you this, but when I was in high school and I went to Youth Ledge, my bill was for high-speed rail. I've never wavered off that. I worked in D.C. where I rode the Metro just about every day. I think Sunrail, and I would agree, Sunrail needs to run later hours. They need to be in the evening. They need to be on the weekends. It needs to run to the airport. We have 55 million tourists come through our airport every year. They need to be able to get to Orlando, to the attractions. We need to connect to Tampa. We need to connect to South Florida. But you can't just have Sunrail. We're going to have to bring links and other public transportation entities into the question so that we can get people from Sunrail stations to the places of work and places where they live, so it's a more comprehensive, better use of our transportation. But yes, it does need to be funded, and it does need to run later, and it does need to do those things. So I agree.
Man, they sound like really alike right here again. What's going on? Hey, if that can happen. Another takeaway, a Republican and Democrat can see eye to eye on some things. Not a lot of things, but some things. Okay, so now we're going to get to our final question. Thank you so much to our audience question on that. So we heard from Mr. Stockton Reeves last on this last question, so now he gets to go first. So this is the final question. How will you personally measure success during your time as a District 47 state representative?
I think it's a combination of things that if I believe strongly in something, can I help bring awareness to it? Can I help bring people to focus in on that issue? It's not just passing bills in committee. I think it's a way that you handle yourself and the way you represent yourself. But I do have some things that I would like to do, and I talked about connecting the Florida Trail. I would like to see that done if I was elected, before I left, and if not, put it in motion so that it would be done. I would think that you get a very short time to serve in the Florida legislature because of term limits. So I would want to set 2 or 3 very simple priorities that I could get in and make a difference on from day one, hit the ground running, and see that those things are effectively accomplished before I left.
Okay. Ms. Eskamani, how will you personally measure success during your time as District 47 state representative?
So my first thought goes to delivering high quality constituent services. We want to make sure that we're a resource to members of our community who, whether it's help paying rent, or they have incredible artwork they want to show off, or they're trying to get their kid into a certain college, we want to be there for you, to be a facilitator, to connect the dots, and help you reach your fullest potential. I also want to bring money back to the district, specifically towards mental health. Mental health is a major issue for us. This is home to Pulse Nightclub. We need to ensure that we have funding for those who've experienced trauma and also for everyday Floridians, whether it's those who have PTSD because of their experience in war or experience as first responders, or just someone like me who lost their mom at a young age and needs those resources. I also want to stress that I will measure my success by my ability to ensure access to healthcare for Floridians. We never expanded Medicaid in the state, despite the fact that our incumbent Representative Mike Miller campaigned on Medicaid expansion when he first ran for office. He split-flopped on us. Medicaid expansion is critical to our state and critical to over 800,000 Floridians who literally live in a coverage gap and have nowhere to go. If we can help find coverage for those Floridians, I will consider any time I spend legislature, whether it's 2 years to 8, as being a success.
All right, you guys, we have just chugged along here with so many topics. Let's go ahead and go over what happened with the coin toss. Okay, and that is that Ms. Eskamani, you will be the last person to speak, okay, for the closing statement. So let's go ahead and hear for 60 seconds. We've got the timer going in just a few moments here. Mr. Stockton Reeves, you have 60 seconds for your closing statement this morning.
My campaign over the last year has talked about transparency, it's talked about equity, it's talked about common sense and pragmatic solutions. I will tell you that I know that there are a lot of challenges in our community, but I believe that there's ways that we can bring positive solutions and work on those. And I will tell you that in my background, in my experience, it's a difference between somebody who's about show and somebody's about work. And I chose over my lifetime to be somebody who was about work, to go out there and volunteer and give my time, energy, and effort to put into place and across this community, whether it's in housing, whether it's in the arts, whether it's in business. I put my energy into trying to make our community a better place. And I want to tell you this. If on November I'm elected, I really appreciate the opportunity to be humble, to respect the people in our district. I've knocked on so many doors, I've met so many different people. My goal is to represent each and every one of us equally, have an open door, and be accessible. And I would ask for your vote in November. Thank you.
Okay, and closing statement now from Anna Eskamani.
Thank you so much. Y'all, this campaign is about people. It's about you. I'm grounded in a deep sense of purpose to ensure that we connect everyday people to what's happening in Tallahassee. I know nothing but hard work. I saw my parents work minimum wage jobs their entire lives until my mom passed away when I was 13 years old, leaving me alone to figure out how I was going to do my part to serve my community. And for the last 10 years, that's exactly what I've done. And I've fought unapologetically for issues that impact hardworking families right in this room. And so whether it's ensuring environmental protection, fighting for good public schools, ensuring that people can be healthy and have coverage despite pre-existing conditions, and also reducing gun violence. These are just a few of the issues that we fight for every single day in our campaign. And you can trust us to be authentic, to be accessible, and to be ethical, and to run a positive, practical campaign that focuses on solving problems versus creating more of them. And so I humbly ask for your support. We have a lot of work to do together, and I can't wait to make it happen.
Thank you to both candidates, Democrat Ana Eskamani and Republican Stockton Reese, for participating in this morning's event and sharing your vision for District 47. At this time, I would like to invite Betsy to come up and close our program.
Thank you, Yvette. What a wonderful job. Can everybody give her a round of applause? We are so grateful for the expertise and the commitment of Charter Spectrum in our community, and thank you again to both Scott and Channel 13 and Yvette for making an impact on the success of today. And I do want to thank our candidates. I really appreciate your allowing this forum to take place so our voters can know more and make informed decisions in early voting and in November. And thank you to all of you for being here. We love, one of the most wonderful things about Winter Park is how much people care about the quality of our life here. And I think that really starts with involved and engaged citizens. So I'm thrilled to see so many of you here and so many of you online and in the overflow room. In 5 seconds we'll hear from you. We're really excited that you're out there. We do want to let you know about a couple of programs that we've got coming up. If it's your first time at the Chamber, you're our favorite people to know, so we're thrilled that you're here. We hope you'll come back to Chamber events. Upcoming Chamber events, one is on Tuesday at the Alpine Inn, the Winter Park Outlook. We'll be hearing from Dr. Sean State from the Center for Economic Competitiveness at UCF. He'll be presenting the Economic Outlook, sponsored by Rollins College, so we love that collaboration. We have Winter Park Executive Women on October 1st, here at the Welcome Center at 11:30. Good Morning Winter Park on October 5th, again here at the Welcome Center, and that event is free. So if you haven't attended a Winter Park Chamber event and you'd like to try one out with low barrier to entry, that's the one for you. Then we have our Autumn Art Festival, October 13th and 14th. There should be a little card on your chair with information about that. And we do have VIP and patron packages still available for that art festival. My team have name badges on that say event staff. If any of us can help connect you to more information or opportunities, please don't hesitate